My name is Dr. Gail Harowitz. I teach chemistry at Brooklyn College, and I do research that looks at student retention, particularly retention of students who are underrepresented in science. Where you go to school or your accident of birth and where you end up going to elementary school and then middle school and high school, without realizing it, it makes a difference in where you end up going to college or how successful you are in college, particularly if you're a child of immigrants or a first-generation college student. So what I observe at Brooklyn College, where many of our students are first-generation college students and many of our students are children of immigrants, is they come to college not being familiar with the landscape and environment of what higher education looks like, particularly when it comes to science. So even though they may have had a perfectly fine background in science, they may have been a star science student in their particular high school, when they come to college, they crash and burn. And that's kind of what you were describing to me about your background, is that you were a really strong student in high school and your high school encouraged you to apply to a really top college. But when you got there, you were lost because you weren't prepared academically the way some of your other students, your classmates were, where they might have had advanced courses in high school or AP courses. And what I find particularly with first-generation college students is that there's a certain level of sophistication or savvy in knowing how to study that students who have college-educated parents know and students who don't have college-educated parents do not know. This is relevant to this ongoing debate now about the specialized high schools, because what I find is that students who are coming from first-generation college backgrounds, where they're the first generation in their family to go to college, if they happen to have gone to a very competitive high school like Brooklyn Tech or Stuyvesant or Bronx Science, they get a different kind of preparation. They get more advanced coursework, but they also get a competitive environment that prepares them to be competitive when they get to college. So when they get to college, they don't flunk out of their sciences. So getting into a science magnet high school, like the difference of a few points on that SAT can make the difference in your entire future. If you come from a low-income background, getting into that magnet science high school can determine what kind of college you get into and whether or not you're successful in that college if you're trying to go into the sciences. Let's say you want to be a doctor, like you were saying. Getting into the right high school means then getting into the right kind of college, being successful in college, and then being successful or not successful in the professional school afterwards, such as medicine or physician assistant. So I think it's really important that people understand that this one standardized test is a make it or break it thing that then has a lot of implications or ripple effect down the road for what happens to that child when they're later going to be applying to college and trying to compete in college with students that may have very, very different backgrounds than they do. Currently, most students who get into medical school and go to medical school have parents who are college educated. So in the local community that I think is listening to your show, people need to realize that if they want their kids to be competitive and to graduate college and go on to careers in healthcare, that getting into these science magnet schools is really important and really crucial. And I think the current debate about whether or not these exams are favoring particular ethnic or racial groups, I think the fundamental fact is that these exams favor people who have the money to pay for tutors or test prep courses like Kaplan. And those Those companies exist and stay in business because they give students who can afford them an advantage. And the cost of those test prep courses is significant. So having some expendable income to spend on those courses gives families with some free cash an advantage over families that do not have that. And I think, the conversation gets waylaid when people talk about, issues of ethnicity and race. So I think that one of the key things to help CUNY-type students succeed is that professors need to include information in their teaching about study skills. And this is something really easy for faculty to do. I'm actually writing a book about it right now. It's something that doesn't require changing in teaching. It doesn't require, slowing down the content in any way. But it can be a really make or break it difference for first-generation college students. Most students who go to a school like Stuyvesant or Bronx Science are going to get into an elite college. They're going to come to that elite college already having had college-level coursework in high school. They're poised to then compete with other top-notch students while they're in college. They're poised to get good grades in their college science courses. So they're poised to be competitive for going to medical school. Students who don't go to those kind of high schools but get into, your average high school in New York, it's sort of luck of the draw what kind of education they get. If they're in a high school that's not very strong in science and math, even if they're one of the top students in science and math in their high school, they may be in for a very rude awakening when they get to college where they're not prepared and they flunk out, meaning they don't pass their classes. They get C's, D's, F's, and W's. And that initial adjustment period to college where they discover that they're not prepared may do damage to their transcript in such a way that they can never recover. And, they may not have the money to then go back and repeat classes, do post-bac programs. They may never make it. So I should say I spend my time fighting for those students and figuring out how they can fix their transcripts to get them in eventually. So one aspect of being a good studier is feeling like you have permission to seek help. And seeking help is a very important part of being successful in science. So seeking help might mean going to professors' office hours. It might mean going to the tutoring center on campus. It might mean emailing your professor. First-generation college students typically don't feel that same sense of entitlement that they belong in the world of higher education, in the college world. So they tend to avoid seeking help, or they tend to ask permission before they seek help. So if I have designated office hours, meaning you're supposed to come to my office hours between 10 and 12, I've had students email me to ask permission to show up to ask me questions during my office hours when, in fact, that is what you're supposed to do. Or permission to sit down in my office to talk to me. Students who come from more privileged economic backgrounds have no qualms about, coming to see me outside my office hours, interrupting me even occasionally, before class, after class, in the hallway, you name it. Which is fine. I don't mind that they do that, but I just notice a very different way of behaving where first-generation college students don't necessarily feel that they have permission to seek out the resources that the university has. And so by not feeling entitled and not feeling allowed to seek out these resources, they increase the disadvantage that they have when they come in. And so learning how to be a help seeker is one of the crucial study behaviors that first-generation students need to learn. A lot of people talk about this issue, about why it's important to have diversity in medicine. I think that the number one reason why you want to have diversity in medicine is that the patients who come and seek healthcare are diverse, and there needs to be a diverse healthcare system to treat them. Patients need to see people that look like them. They need to feel comfortable to ask questions. They need a healthcare workforce that's like culturally sensitive, that knows how to handle different kinds of issues that come up because of cultural differences and religious differences. So the more diverse the workforce is, the better it can handle the patient population that we have in the United States. To send them to the best high school they can, and to make sure they take as many advanced math and science courses as they possibly can. If they get to high school and they have the opportunity to take AP courses, they should take them. If it's not an AP course, but the kid has the opportunity to take pre-calculus or to take calculus, they should. If their high school says, okay, here's the minimum amount of science you need in order to get your high school diploma, the child should take as much science as they possibly can in high school. So if they're trying for a Regents diploma, then they need 2 years of science. They should try to do 3. They should try to do as much as they possibly can. The more rigorous their science and math in high school, the better prepared they are for college. I think that it's a very, very complicated issue. I think that you have students who come into the system with all different kinds of needs, and so across the system, students who come in with the most economic advantage do the best in the system, and students who have the most challenges, the system, of course, struggles to serve them the best. And I think, so I guess my opinion is that people like to point fingers and find a particular group to blame. So sometimes people blame teachers, sometimes they blame the Board of Ed, sometimes they blame parents. I think that education is way, way, way too complicated and nuanced, and that's not the right way to make things better. The right way to make things better is to look critically at the whole problem. And, I was saying at the very beginning, I actually do research on how to improve student retention in science at Brooklyn College. And, through doing research, I discovered that the key linchpin here happens to be study skills. But I wouldn't feel at all like I know, how to fix, the education outside of my situation. Came to Brooklyn College 8 years ago, and I was given a mandate to improve retention and performance in organic chemistry. When I came, they told me the rate of success in organic chemistry was 50%, which was shocking to me because I had taught at private colleges before that. And so I started just to try to learn the landscape of why people were doing poorly, and it didn't seem to me there was any particular demographic that was doing poorly. But I discovered that students who did well had a different kind of MO in terms of their study behaviors. And so I gradually figured out that students who had more sophisticated study behaviors were doing better. And then I gradually learned or discovered by accident that there were many first-generation college students here. And so I sort of put 2 and 2 together, that was the key thing, that first-generation college students would make a lot of mistakes, and they would try to study sort of by brute force and by using the wrong study habits over and over, and sort of almost like trying to put in as much time as possible to their studying and not necessarily be strategic in the way they were studying. And so I realized that students need to be trained to do things differently, and faculty need to play a role in helping students to be better studiers. So I think that it's really crucial that science faculty, not just at places like CUNY, but all across the country, need to weave this into their teaching to level the playing field for first gens, because I think, students who are more privileged, they come into college knowing how to study, and first gens, and particularly low-income first gens, don't come into college knowing that stuff. You could have a great professor or a terrible professor, but I think college-level science, if you're on a pre-med track, is very challenging, and you have to master a lot of content very quickly, and let's say you're going to go on to medical school where you're going to be expected to teach the material to yourself. If you don't have a very sophisticated level of study skills, you're not going to make it. So you need to up your game and sort of develop this self-awareness of where are you at and how do you need to be studying differently. It's called self-regulated learning. So students need to become better self-regulated learners. And faculty can easily help them to do this. It's much easier to teach students how to be sophisticated studiers than it is to teach them physics and calculus and organic chemistry. So I think why not do it, since there's many complicated scientific topics that we put a lot of effort towards trying to get students to understand. So to tell students for different topics that there are particularly good ways to study those topics, I think we owe it to our students to tell them these sort of secrets that some students know and some students don't know. Why not tell them? Well, there are some books out there that have been written about developing of study skills, and there's actually websites now. There's a website called I'm First. So there are some resources out there for students who are first-generation college students, and I would suggest probably surfing the web is the fastest and freest way for parents to sort of become educated about how is it different when your kid is a first-generation college student. And I think for parents who maybe are new to this country and English isn't their first language, I think it's the kids that are, the tech-savvy people who should be going online, reading up about, how is it different to have an identity as a first-generation college student, and joining, let's say, an organization like I'm First, or looking around for colleges that have organizations specifically for first-generation college students. There are now organizations on different college campuses. There are national conferences for first-generation college students. So the more students can educate and inform themselves, the better their adjustment will be when they come to college. So there are many science classes that are problem-solving based classes where I would say that students get tripped up, where they're trying to learn the concepts and they don't spend enough time on problem solving. So I guess general chemistry and calculus and organic chemistry and physics all fit that category, where you need to devote the majority of your study time towards problem solving. Biology is very different. Biology is much more a fact-based kind of class. But again, every single course and even the topics within the course vary in how you would approach studying for them. So for example, we have a molecule over here, which is a asymmetric molecule, and how I would suggest students study the concepts related to lack of symmetry is very different than how I might tell them to study some other topic in organic chemistry. So topic by topic, whether I would tell the students to read versus emphasize a particular type of problem solving, is something that the content expert for a particular course within a discipline, that's something that faculty are experts at. And students can start to delve into that by talking to students who have just finished the course, for example. But I think that's that varies from subject to subject. We have this idea that the American educational system, is sort of an equal system. It's a public system. You don't pay for it, and that, you show up to your local school and you're going to get the same education as someone else who shows up to their local school somewhere else. But the reality is that you have to be a lot smarter than that in order to make sure that your kid gets the same advantages as the kid, 3 subway stops away, let's say. And so you got to start like being on the lookout to make sure that your kid is getting the right opportunities, and particularly in terms of the standardized test, I think who succeeds at this test and who gets in and who doesn't get in has a lot of implications for later down the road. I guess I really want to say what's up to all the chemistry students I've had at Brooklyn College, especially the ones that are, I don't know, at the point where they're applying or struggling to apply to different professional schools, and they're, really pushing and studying for the MCAT, whatever it is. Like, some of them are launched already, but it's the ones that are like in limbo in between, college and beyond that, I don't know, I want to send my encouragement to and say what's up to.